I have a reading this evening, but I will have, because of elections tomorrow, our favorite comments by presidents. Just a couple of quick ones. The President of the United States is supposed to represent the people of the country. And since we Americans have a sense of humor that is strong as it is broad, it's not surprising that presidents can occasionally crack up their audiences. Here are a few chuckles from our chief executives. John Adams on the legislature. In many years, I have come to a conclusion that one useless man is a shame, two is a law firm, and three or more is a Congress. Here's one from Abraham Lincoln on a political foe. He can compress the most words into the smallest idea of any man I ever met. On Teddy Roosevelt, on corruption in Congress. So we think we have it bad today, it was just as bad back then. On corruption in Congress, when they call the roll in the Senate, the senators do not know whether to answer present or not guilty. Calvin Coolidge, to a woman sitting next to the president, Coolidge at a dinner party told him she bet a friend she could get at least 3 words of conversation out of him. He said, "You lose." Franklin Roosevelt, on being informed by an aide that Eleanor Roosevelt, who was conducting a fact-finding tour of a penitentiary, was in prison. "I'm not surprised, but for what?" And John Kennedy said, "I was almost late here today, but I had a very good taxi driver who brought me through the traffic jam. I was going to give him a very large tip and tell him to vote Democratic. And then I remember some advice from Senator Green had given me. So I gave him no tip at all and told him to vote Republican." And Lyndon Johnson, addressing a Marine who said, "President, this is your helicopter over here." He said, "They're all my helicopters." And Jimmy Carter, I'll just read one more. On a late resurgence of his popularity, "My esteem in this country has gone up substantially. It is very nice now when people wave at me, they use all their fingers." Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, there have been no executive sessions since our last meeting. Approval of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes? Are there any comments, questions, changes?
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Higgins brought to my attention a change. I think we inadvertently had you voting for the BlackRock funding, so we made sure that the corrected minutes have that as you voting no. So it was a 3-1. The final budget changes, we drafted, you don't have them before you, but we did reflect that change in the ones that have been published.
Okay,
Laura, you know which one I'm talking?
Yeah.
help me out here.
It was,
And there was one other item.
Listen, I apologize, but my computer's not working, so I don't have any of this in
Okay.
front of me here.
We're trying to get some hard copies, too.
I understand that.
One other question is, I think we had, Helene wasn't here, but we actually had her voting
She voted
on a
anyway.
motion. So I knew that was physically impossible.
4-0,
So
3-1.
we corrected that motion. I think those were the 2 changes I commented.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
but that's the old version. It's been corrected.
okay. So I don't have to do anything with this then.
I think we just still pass it, right?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting from October 15th with the change that Supervisor Pearson voted in the negative on the motion to approve the 2019 budget timeline. Is that?
No, it was, he voted in opposing the joint committee.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my bad. I apologize. Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of October 15th with one change that, that was identified, that Supervisor Pearson, in fact, voted in the negative to consider appointing township residents to serve on the, hang on, there's 3 of them here, I apologize.
I think it's item number.
Yes, that's it,
Yeah.
that's it, that's the right one. Supervisor Pearson voted negative to pass, to consider appointed township representatives to serve on the Joint Fire and Emergency Services Committee with representatives from Trap Barrel, number 4 on the agenda item. So it was a 3-1 instead of 4-0, which is what we were provided.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes of October 15th regular meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr.
Those
Chairman, you-
opposed? Motion carries. Excuse me?
You need to go back to, you skipped over the bill list.
We
You
just
skipped
have
over the
list.
bill list.
Let's go back to the bill list.
Okay. Again, I apologize. I don't have that information in front of me. Approval of the bill list. I entertain a motion. Has everybody had a chance to look at this?
Could you go get his laptop?
I'll make a motion to approve the bill list for October 12th to 31st, 2018, for the amount of $759,919.18.
Get to the public hearing.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve the bill list from October 12th through the October 31st in the amount of $759,919.18. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the motion carries. Okay, public comments. Anyone?
Guess who that is?
Charles Stoll, 443 Lower Indian Head Road. I just want to bring to your attention the fact that SEI, not according to the plan that was submitted, has cleared a section of woods that was supposed to be screening for their new parking deck. And I was just wondering how that happened and what is going to be done about that. They altered the stream and removed large trees, which was not shown on the original plan.
I took a ride down there the other day. When I got your email, I took a ride down there, checked it out. I think you're absolutely right. I can't answer you what we're going to do about it right now. I think everybody got copied on your email. Right now, we haven't come up with a plan of action on that, but it's definitely on our radar. And thank you for bringing that to our attention.
All right, thanks, John.
Jerry Prosciutti, 17 Longacre Drive, Collegeville. I want to raise the issue of the rec center again. This continued fiasco from this summer, which should never have come up to begin with. But the current hours that, if I go back and consider the original hours, which were during the week, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., Monday to Thursday, and I think it's closed earlier on Friday. The new hours are 8 a.m. during the week, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., Monday through Thursday. If you take the assumption, the typical workday goes from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., maybe 6 p.m. I know all of us work different hours, various hours, but you're basically giving people who choose to work out in the evenings 4 hours of access, and people who would like to work out in the morning, 0 hours of access before 8 a.m. I don't know how that's fair when you adjusted the new hours. So I would like to request that either the rec center open an hour earlier,
Thank you.
or you shift the hours to begin at 7 a.m. and close at 8 p.m. You know, the people who have 4 hours can adjust their schedules to come earlier. Instead of showing up at 8 o'clock to work out for an hour, they can show up at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock because they have access. For those of us who want to work out in the morning, we have no option. So I would like the board to make a vote to change those hours, adjust them one way or the other, or add the hour if you don't want to adjust them.
Well, Jerry, you know, I got your email, okay. It was sent to Tim, and I got copied on your email. We discussed it earlier today. I found out that in order to change just those 2 hours, just to accommodate, they have a swipe up there that every time somebody comes in, we know who's coming in and what time, okay?
I'm aware of that.
And they went back over the last year or so, and it indicated that there were 2 people maximum most of the time. On occasion, there were maybe 4 people. The expense involved in opening that thing up another 2 hours early every day turns out to be roughly $10,000 a year, and I personally am not going to approve something like that. I don't know about the rest of the board. You can ask them their opinion.
Well, a couple points. First, I'm not asking for 2 hours, I'm asking for 1 hour. I'm asking for a shift in hours, not an additional hour, because there should be no incremental cost if you shift the hours. If you start it 1 hour earlier and end it 1 hour earlier, there should be no incremental cost. And 2, I would like to formally request the swipe data for 2 years, by month, by week, by day, by hour, because I saw the numbers that Tim had sent over, coming up with that average. I'm going to verify those numbers, and I want to compare the hours between 7 and 8 with the usage between 8 and 9 p.m. And you could tell me why we can't shift the hours 1 hour to provide access to people who have no access when the people in the evenings have 4 hours of access.
So, Mr. Percuse, I just put my 2 cents into this. Is this working? The change in hours was not determined by this entire board. I'll make that clear from the beginning. Up until about a year and a half ago, I was a paying member of the Recreation Center, and I worked out between 6 and 8 in the morning. I am not able to do that now because of my change of employment. I would agree with you that it should be changed, and I don't know whether the hours are part of the ordinance that was adopted with the fee schedule, but we have a fee schedule for the Recreation Center that I don't believe is being followed now. It's being changed, but we have an adopted fee schedule that's part of our entire fee schedule, which includes sewer, building permits, and everything else. But I, for one, would agree with you that it should be opened earlier. And my card does not swipe anymore, okay, but it did swipe, okay? And I don't know how it's determined what's a valid swipe and what is not a valid swipe.
And to follow on to your point, I'm also going to formally request this data from whatever process I have to go to request the financials of, not just the swipe data, but I want to get the financials for the last 2 years, and then I want to get them for next year, because I'm pretty sure that the incompetent decision to announce the closure of that facility without any viable plan other than bird identification classes or whatever your lead candidate was, has already cost the rec center probably at least $10,000. And I'm pretty good with data, so I'm going to go through that data in detail and come back to this meeting with that assessment to understand how much revenue we've already lost. And I guarantee you it's more than $10,000 because of that initial decision. So whatever the process is to request that data, I want to formally request that data.
Yeah, Mr. Brigitte, I'm sure you can either, A, put a right to know request in, or Mr. Tieperman will be happy to just get you the info.
Thank you. And
Now,
one last point. Also, when that original case was made as to shut down the rec center because of not enough utilization of the facility by the entire community, ironically, I come home today for dinner, and I get our nice monthly flyer for the township. And I see in here on page 2, skate park project is underway. Can you tell us what the cost of the enhancements to the skate park project are and what your utilization assumptions are for a skate park? And by show of hands, is there anybody in here who actually will use, is anybody here going to get out a skateboard and use that skate park? Show of hands.
he's out of line.
The skate
I'm
park
just
is
asking.
used
I mean,
by
not
the
the
people
market
who
here.
aren't here. This isn't the market for the skate park.
But your families use the skate park.
Okay, I was involved with the skate park when it was originally constructed, and it is that kind of money, but I will tell you from personal observation and being there, that it's the most utilized facility, recreation facility in this township. And I would support it, and I don't skate.
Okay. How much
Okay.
does it cost for the
It's
enhancement?
$385,000.
$385,000.
Okay, plus the concrete, yes.
Okay, and it's $10,000 to adjust the hours to make the rec center, one, more usable by a broader amount of people because you're pretty much shutting out anybody who wants to work out in the mornings.
Mr. Chairman, I think we're straying from the public comment period at this point. He's been given longer than your usual time, and it's starting to become more argument and demanding answers out of you as opposed to just offering comment.
All right, that's my comment.
Thank you for stepping in, and we'll get you the information that you need.
I request a vote.
If I could. So there's been, we either have a rec center or we don't. I read Mr. Prosciutti's email. I don't think it's an unreasonable request, so I'll make a motion that we direct the township manager to open the rec center 1 hour earlier at 7 a.m. And going forward within 30 days. That's
Only
my
during the
motion.
week.
Only during the week. I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second to open the recreation center, the fitness center.
The recreation center.
Well, the recreation
can't
center,
open
the
one without
fitness
the
part
other.
of the recreation center, 1 hour earlier. All those in favor say aye.
Can I clarify
just-
something? Are we shifting it or we're adding the hour on?
What Al's
Adding the
motion was to
hour.
add an hour on in the
Yes.
morning, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and it was not just the fitness center. You can't open the fitness center without the recreation center.
Recreation center.
Right.
So it's the recreation
Recreation
center.
center.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to open the facility 1 hour earlier. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, no.
No.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
So that was 30 days, as best we can? That was the motion.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
David Rush, 95 Yerkes Road, Collegeville. I just have a concern with, on Black Rock and Hollow Road, particularly Hollow Road. I believe there's a water leak that's been there for years that's kind of showing itself now. If you go down Hollow Road, on the right-hand side, there's a walking path. And if you look to your right, you can see the water just spewing up from the, from the ground. It's been like that for years.
What part of Hollow, what section of Hollow Road are you talking about?
If you turn off of Black Rock to Hollow Road,
Okay.
on your right-hand side, there's a walking path. Okay, you know what I'm talking about on,
I'm unfamiliar. The section of Hollow Road between Black Rock and Egypt Road does not have a walking path on the
if
right-hand
you
side.
turn, if you're coming from the township building on Black Rock Road and you turn left. I
Turn north
believe
on the
that's-
Hollow Road.
That's Troutman Road.
Okay, Troutman Road, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
That's okay.
On your right-hand side, there's a walking path, and next to the walking path, it's been wet for years. And now if you go by, you can see there's like a 5-foot circle where the water is just spewing out. It's not natural. It has to be a water leak.
That's
There's
on-
staining on the walking path from rust.
On the walking path, that
Yeah,
belongs to.
you'll see if you drive down there.
Okay,
It's
I go by,
obvious.
I drive that every day, several times a day.
Yeah, I mean, there's a 5-foot circle where you can, I bet you if you dig right there, you're gonna find a water leak.
Okay,
Guaranteed. It's been there for years, but now that it's so wet, it really shows itself. Just see if we can get it fixed.
I'll bring it to the attention of the owners, and whoever's responsible for it, we'll take a look at that, Dave.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Could you make a note of that, Tim, please? Any other questions or comments? Okay, we're going to have a public hearing, convene hearing on a conditional use application filed by Audubon Land Development for the residences at Providence Town Center.
Okay, Mark, ready? All right. Okay, we're on the record for a conditional use hearing on an application that was filed by PTC 106 LLC. And this is for those who are in attendance, a conditional use hearing is a specific type of hearing recognized by state law. The ordinances that are created by the township can have uses that are allowed automatically by right, and it can have uses that are prohibited, and then in the middle, there are uses that are allowed as long as the applicant shows compliance with certain specific criteria in the ordinance. At one of these hearings, this board is acting in a slightly different capacity than it usually is. Usually, it's legislative adopting ordinances, and in a conditional use hearing, this board sits in a judicial capacity, we call it quasi-judicial, where they're passing upon the applicant's proof that it satisfies the criteria in the ordinance. And that is done through a presentation, in this case from Mr. Mullen, and whatever witnesses he may have in support of his case. Before we turn it over to him, I'll have a couple of board exhibits admitted to the reporter. Board Exhibit 1 will be a copy of the legal notice that was published for tonight's hearing. Exhibit 2 is the email back from the newspaper confirming publication. They sometimes delay in sending out the formal notice that they complied, and when we get that, we'll catch it up to the record. But I do have the confirming email. And then Board Exhibit 3 is a copy of the conditional use application itself. So I'll have those admitted as board documents. For anyone who wishes to offer any questions or comments, you will be given that opportunity at the conclusion of each witness, but it will be, orderly, and we will go in turn to field whatever questions or concerns you may have. So everyone will have an opportunity to speak before a vote is taken. If the board is comfortable at the end of the presentation that the criteria have been met, you can certainly vote this evening to approve or deny the application. You also have the luxury, and I'm not asking to do it, but if you wanted to, you wouldn't have to decide tonight. We would have 45 days within which to announce a decision. Most customarily, they are decided the same evening, but they don't have to be. And also, before you announce your decision, if you have any concerns or conditions that you would attach to an approval that you wish to discuss privately with me in executive session, you are entitled to do that before we would reconvene and announce a decision if you feel the need to do that. So with that as background, and having admitted those 3 exhibits, I will turn it over to Mr. Mullen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening. Ed Mullen, Hamburg, Rubin, Mullen, Maxwell, and Lupin. I'm here tonight on behalf of PTC 106 LLC, which is the owner, and Audubon Land Development Corp., which is the applicant. We're here tonight requesting not only conditional use approval, but also tentative land development approval, and they're both on your agenda. And because there are multiple crossovers between the 2 applications, I'm going to have 2 witnesses that are going to speak to both of them, and then we can, when we get to the land development, we will have already heard what we're going to say about that in the conditional use hearing. I only propose to have tonight 2 witnesses, Brad Macy, representing the owner, who will establish the fact that we do in fact comply with your ordinance for the conditional use criteria, and we'll also talk about compliance with your subdivision land development ordinance. Then I'm also going to have Seth Shapiro, land planner from Barton Partners, and Seth is going to actually go over the plan and tell you where we were and where we've come to and what we propose. And unlike what Mr. President suggested, if it's acceptable, what I'd like to do is hold the questions till after both of them, because you might ask questions of Brad that Seth is going to answer. So I think it would just make it go more smoothly, and we'll be as brief as we can be in order to comply with the requirements of the ordinance, because I realize you have a heavy agenda. One problem that we do have is that both Brad and I have bad backs. It's going to be a little bit of time, so if you don't mind, we're going to sit and share the microphone. Brad, would you stand up to be sworn in, however? Okay, get close to me, but not too close. By whom are you employed?
Audubon Land Development,
And what is your business address?
Egypt Road in Audubon.
And have you been involved in this proposal since its beginning?
Yes. Started roughly around 2013.
Now, the ordinance at section 182-120.19 which is part of the I-03 Interchange Office Retail Service and Recreational District, allows multifamily dwellings by conditional use. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm going to walk you through the ordinance and the criteria set forth in the ordinance. The entire tract must be located within the I-03 zoning district, is it?
It is.
The tract must have frontage of at least 175 feet on an arterial road, does it?
It does.
The tract under development must be at least 25 acres in size, is it?
25 acres.
The tract must have a common property line with a developed shopping center, does it?
Yes, it does.
The proposal satisfies all applicable objective conditional use criteria adopted by the ordinance prior to the submission of the application. Did we do that?
Yes.
A master plan must be submitted with the conditional use application, drawn to tentative sketch plan requirements. Was that done?
Yes, it was.
The master plan shall also include the information required by section 154-12D for the proposed lot and road layout. This will show the relationship among the various buildings and parking areas, stormwater and sewage requirements, as well as residential units, including pharmacies. Wait a minute. Yep. And must show how the development of the tract will function cohesively as an integrated development. Have we done that? Yes. Pedestrian accommodation shall be included on the tract in locations logical to provide pedestrian movement between buildings and between buildings and parking areas and between buildings and parking areas and open spaces. Did we do that?
Yes, we did.
Permitted uses include residential buildings which contain any combination of attached dwellings and multifamily dwellings. Is that what we're proposing?
Yes, the proposal as shown is consistent with the permitted uses.
A hotel, including extended stay hotel, the hotel may not exceed an area of 4 acres, not including common driveways serving both multifamily and the hotel. The hotel and parking shall be within 350 feet of the property line shared with the shopping center and shall not exceed 55 feet in height. Is that what's shown on our plan?
Yes.
Commercial uses may be permitted if the use is wholly contained other than outdoor seating within the multifamily residential building and located on the ground floor, and shall be permitted only in those buildings with facades within 100 feet of the shared shopping center property line. The commercial uses must directly serve the needs of the residential units, including pharmacies, coffee shops, newsstands, along with service establishments such as automated bank machines, fitness centers, travel consultants, single practitioner medical offices, or other small-scale office use, as well as a full-service restaurant serving food on premises with table service. Are we proposing that?
In the event that commercial uses are provided, they shall meet these requirements.
Okay, the tract to be developed shall be in one ownership. Is that the case?
Yes.
You are required to submit a traffic impact analysis, and you submitted a study dated February 20th, 2018, which was revised on August 6, 2018 from TPD. Is that correct?
That is.
You are also required to submit a market study, and you submitted a market study prepared by Newmark Knight, Frank, dated January 25th, 2018. Is that correct?
Yes.
You are also required to submit a community impact statement, and you submitted a community impact statement dated January 18, 2018, prepared by yourself. Is that correct?
That is.
Now, you are not required to submit a fiscal impact study, but Mr. Grace, in his review letter, requested such a study. And did we, in fact, submit a study prepared by David C. Babbitt and Associates, dated March 6, 2018?
Yes, we did.
The ordinance at section 182-120.19C2 sets forth various development regulations concerning height, parking, signage, access, common areas, lighting, and other items. Are your plans in compliance with those requirements?
Yes.
Section 182-120.19F sets forth tract development requirements. Do your plans comply with all of those requirements?
Yes.
Finally, with respect to the ordinance, Section 182-204 deals with the procedure for consideration of conditional use applications. Have we complied with all those procedures?
Yes.
Now, we received various review letters from township consultants as follows. 1, Montgomery County Planning Commission dated September 26, 2018. 2, McMahon Associates dated September 5, 2018. 3, Grace Planning Associates dated September 5, 2018. 4, Gilmore Engineering and Consulting Services dated August 30th, 2018. Now, initially, we did receive all those letters, did we not?
Yes, we did.
And initially, we had some questions and issues with those review letters, and subsequently met with all the staff members to resolve those issues. Is it your understanding, as a result of that meeting, that we are able to say we will comply with all the review letters?
Yes.
Do we acknowledge our responsibility to pay $1,000 for each anticipated peak hour trip, the traffic impact fee?
Yes.
Have we had ongoing meetings with our neighbors from White Springs Farm, with the most recent meeting being on October 3rd?
Yes.
Did the Township Planning Commission, at its meeting on Monday, September 10th, recommend approval of both the conditional use and the tentative plan?
Yes, they did.
That's all the questions I have of Mr. Macy, and I'd like to have Mr. Shapiro be sworn in and go over the plan and show you what we're talking about.
Raise your right hand. Swear to testify
Seth, tell us about your business address.
It is 700 East Main Street in Norristown, Pennsylvania.
And by whom are you
Can you use
employed?
the microphone?
Yeah. We'll stay here and then you can go back.
Okay, I'm employed by the firm called Barton Partners Architects and Planners, Inc.
And Barton Partners? Barton Partners were retained by Audubon Land Development to work on this proposal?
Yes.
All right, would you briefly describe for the board and the audience the plans and how they have evolved into the development that we're proposing, with particular reference to the roundabout, the fact that Grand Canyon is no longer a through road, describe our discussions with the owners of the adjacent shopping center, and talk about the extension of the berm?
Sure. We had an illustrative plan on a jump drive, if you could put that up there. And I'm also going to go over to the easels here and put some drawings up. Let's start with. If you don't mind, I think I'll just point to the screen so that everybody can see. The plan you see here is our proposal. What you have shown here are 585 multifamily units. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Thank you. Now it's all, now we're real. Okay. All right. So, we have 585 units here located in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 multifamily buildings, as well as a one-story clubhouse facility with recreational facilities behind it, a swimming pool. At the center of the community, we actually have what is a 1-acre park. While on private property, it is viewed as a public space. And then we have our extended stay hotel over here. The plan has actually evolved over time from when we first started. One of the bigger changes that was made was that in meeting with our neighbors over here at White Springs Farms, we had originally proposed a road system that went through here connecting Grand Canyon Drive. Even though this was one way this way and this was one way that way, we had this road connecting through here. It was stated very clearly from the residents of White Springs Farms that that was not a desirable outcome. And so we had decided to listen And therefore, what we have here is a small little turnaround that does not allow this to go through. However, we do have a pedestrian linkage. We think the pedestrian linkage is incredibly important. One of the other changes that was made was the addition of a roundabout on Arcola Road, right here at Waterloop and Arcola. Anybody who's familiar with that intersection, especially when you're making a left out of Waterloop, I guess you just sort of pray and go. Very bad sight distance. We as land planners love roundabouts. This is not a traffic circle, it's a roundabout, much smaller. Slows traffic down, really reduces the conflict between pedestrians and vehicles, and we think that's incredibly important along here at Arcola. And also, from an urban design standpoint, from a planning standpoint, it kind of serves as a gateway between a commercial section of the township and the residential section of the township, where Arcola goes from a wide section to a much thinner section. So we really welcome that aspect of the plan. Lastly, and perhaps most significantly, as part of our outreach to White Springs Farms, we established the notion of a very large berm, essentially working as a visual barrier between our development and theirs. And in fact, in places, this berm is 15 feet high and will be planted with arborvitaes and other sort of buffer trees that will really cut the visual, sort of the ability to see our development from theirs. There were some other changes that were made along those discussions. Specifically, this building here was pulled much further this way, and also we cut the corner of this building and then actually used that to flip this way. So they're identical buildings. We actually increased the distance quite significantly between our closest neighbor over here and this building. Did I miss anything? Did I get it all? I think that's
About the extension of the
the extension of the room. Lastly, thank you. So two other things that happened as part of our discussions, both with the neighbors and the township. First was, while we had the berm ending here, because that's where our property ends, we are working on an agreement to extend our berm onto the White Springs property to further help with that buffer. And that you can actually see in the plan right here. And then lastly, when we originally proposed this, one of the things that we felt very strongly about was the pedestrian linkages down to the shopping center. We met with Brandolini, the folks who own and operate the shopping center, and it became clear to us that the best two places to make that pedestrian link, the safest two places to make those pedestrian links, were right here, right from our sort of central square down over here, and then down here towards the Wegmans. We had originally thought that we might have a connection over here, but the traffic with the way people use this road and cutting in and out of the parking lot, it just didn't seem safe to us. So we've really tried to enhance the sidewalk link over here along Waterloop, a nice wide planting strip with street trees and a wide sidewalk, that pedestrian linkage here down to the Wegmans, and then a second one here, and we'll most likely be showing some kind of special paving to really slow traffic down, and I think we're actually looking at stop signs or other sort of vehicles, other elements to really slow traffic down to make pedestrian access safe.
Thank you. Now, that concludes our testimony, but I do have with me, as I think I mentioned, Eric Ostomchuk from Traffic Planning and Design and our civil engineer, Kim Kreider, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have, and we'll pass the mic around appropriately.
And just so everybody understands, just to recap a point that Mr. Mullen made earlier, and I had also alluded to it, this is a combined, that testimony was a combined testimony that addressed two different things. Zoning is what you're allowed to do with your land. The subdivision and land development ordinance is how you do it. So SALDO, we call the SALDO, by its acronym, Subdivision and Land Development Ordinance, that controls the details of how you develop a property. The zoning ordinance, which is the conditional use hearing that we're on, is whether you're allowed to do the thing that you want to do. But there's always an overlap, especially here because your zoning ordinance for the conditional use application requires your applicant to submit a land development application at the same time. So what you have going on tonight is the conditional use hearing, And at the same time, the first of 3 steps on the land development application, which is the tentative sketch plan, which is the first of, then there's a preliminary and then there's a final. So it's the early first step on the land development, and it's the only step, conditional use, on the zoning component of it. So you would decide your zoning first. That's why we're having the hearing. And if you approve if you decide that Mr. Mullen has satisfied meeting the criteria in the ordinance, then he's entitled to that approval. And then you would move on to the tentative sketch plan vote, which is after that. But just for the ease of not making everybody sit through the same witnesses twice, Mr. Mullen presented the witnesses to sort of present some evidence on both of those things. So you heard the stuff about running through the approval letters. That's for the resolution for the land development more than it is the zoning. The zoning was when Mr. Mullen ran them through the sections of the zoning ordinance. So that's kind of the framing what it is that the testimony was, and it might help guide the questions. You would consider the conditional use vote. That's going to be first, because if they don't get the conditional use, then they can't meet that requirement for the land development application, but that would come right after it. That's why they're typically scheduled this way, back to back.
So the recommendation by the Planning Commission is one approval that's the conditional use and tentative plan.
Because the application came in both on one application. The conditional use and tentative sketch were both on a single application that went to the Planning Commission. I mean, 2 different things, but they were on one application.
So that being as Mr. Mullen already testified that they will meet all the requirements of the consultant's review letters, if I have questions on those, should I ask them now or wait until the conditional?
I think we're doing all the testimony and all the questions now, so now would be good.
Okay, so you can select your appropriate consultant to answer. First of all, and this may be a big one, and I'm referring to Kim Kreider's letter, okay, because you responded to all the other consultants' review comments. Number 10 is regarding waivers, and I just want to know what additional waivers during the land development process you anticipate having to request. I know that's a preliminary plan requirement. However, you're pretty far into the design and engineering now. What might they be?
Kim?
I do. Kim, that's K-I-M, Kreider, K-R-Y-D-E-R. Right, Phil, right now, what we have as waivers is really all we think we're going to need at this point. So we're really not asking for anything more right now.
So it's just like curb radiuses and very small items like that, is that?
Correct.
There's no major
No.
setbacks or anything
Nope.
like that?
No, we think we're going to be able to handle all stormwater items and the whole bit.
Okay. Stormwater, Mr. Martin, I guess, alluded to the site distance at Arcola Road and Waterloop Road, and there's a large berm there. Will that be removed? Because even though we go with a traffic circle,
Roundabout.
a roundabout, looking at it there, you still, I believe, would have a sight distance looking up Arcola Road as you pull out there. So will that be, that area be all regraded there?
This will be your, Jeff gets one.
I do. Well, it hasn't been fully designed yet, but, lost the plan. But when we do the roundabout, what we're able to do here, as you can see, this hatching in here, we need that to get the lanes to line up as you enter the roundabout coming southbound or eastbound. And this vehicle then comes out a little bit further past this berm where it is today to provide you with more sight distance. Additionally, entering the roundabout, the speeds are typically 15 to 20 miles per hour rather than 55 or 60, what they might be there today. But as we get into the design, if there is a sight distance item that we have to address there, we certainly will. There's very specific sight distance requirements we have to address for the roundabout. And if we have to change that berm in some way to meet that, we will. But we have the advantage of shifting things northeast here to provide a little bit more sight distance there.
How about a lot more sight distance? I'd just like you to Mr. Parker's point, driving that every day, please exceed what you're required to do.
Certainly.
Okay? That's a big deal.
Right. Mr. O'Brien's in the audience
All
here.
right.
And I'm
And
sure,
he's heard us say that. so-
Yes, so we will coordinate as we go through the design of that.
I had a question about open space. Can you point out where it is and how much is set aside?
So this plan actually has a lot of open space, and while it's all on private property, we certainly think that this sort of public square, which again is about 1 acre in size, could really be a public benefit. I could see folks, using the takeout facilities at over at Wegmans and coming and sitting here and having lunch or dinner on the nicer night. But the plan also has lots of other public spaces, most of which are actually private amenity for the residents of the community. Each building actually surrounds a courtyard. And then, of course, the clubhouse has a swimming facility, a dog park behind it here. And then also our internal drives are all designed to actually be very sort of pedestrian friendly. They all have wide planting strips, street trees between the curb and the sidewalk, so they're comfortable to walk on. And in fact, the center drive here is actually designed as a boulevard with an open space in the middle. So we think it's quite a green plan.
So that 1 acre square there in the middle, that will have access to anyone who's in the shopping center can go over and use it then?
Not going to be gated. Obviously, it is on private property, and there is going to be a management company running the community. So if there's misbehavior or anything going on in that square, it'll be taken care of. But it is, wide open.
I have a question for you. You say that you've been in touch with the people from White Springs, all the residents from.
Yes.
And you've addressed all of their concerns, because in a couple of minutes, we're going to open up the floor here to these people. They're going to come up to us and tell us what they want. So I'm assuming that you've met with them and you've
Yes.
dealt with all of their concerns.
Seth, mention the one building.
The one building, this building right here. So one of the issues that has come up was the notion of possibly dropping a story on this building. These are all, by the way, 4 stories and 5-story buildings. These two buildings are 4 stories. These buildings are actually 5 stories on the back side, but 4 on this side because of the way the grade works. And in fact, I have some renderings if you want to put the renderings up as well. I'll put those up on the board here. One of the suggestions that was made, which we looked at and we just can't accommodate, was the idea of taking this building here, which again is 4 stories, taking a story off of it and placing it on top of one of the other buildings. There are construction type and architectural issues associated with that in terms of how the buildings are built and other building code issues that make that very difficult to do.
Does that still keep you under the 55-foot?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. So and what's up now are some renderings from different areas. In fact, this goes back to your question as well about the open space. You can see looking into that sort of park space. There's our clubhouse. There are the buildings framing that space. You can see how we do the sidewalks. Clubhouse right there as well. But the idea, it was really about that building right there, whether we could drop a story and then add it to here. But like I said, there were some real code issues that were associated with that we just could not accommodate. But otherwise, I think we addressed all of their concerns, but I guess we'll hear that shortly.
So I was wondering about the buffering that you already talked about, the buffering that was going to be between this development and the residential and the White Springs. Sorry. There is, and maybe I should direct it at Jeff. I assume that there's a certain height trees that we require to put on that buffering. I assume it's not just going to be a 15-foot mound. There'll be trees and other.
The township does have.
You want to get him sworn, Mark?
Do I need? I do. Yes, they will certainly have to adhere to the township's buffering standards, certain tree heights. They haven't offered anything above and beyond those tree heights, but what they have discussed is planting those trees early in the process before any real construction begins. And I can let them explain that better, but from my standpoint, they haven't offered any other trees than what's required in the ordinance.
What's required? Did you know offhand?
For a deciduous tree, or for an evergreen tree, you're talking 5 to 6 feet at planting, so about my height, closer to 5 feet. For deciduous trees and some other trees, I think it's 3.5 to 5.5 inch caliper, and you generally measure, correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, at shoulder height, correct?
Depends on the landscape architect.
Yeah. So, again, they put in a lot of trees in the township. They know generally what the standard is. I'm not worried about that at this point. I mean, when we do a landscape inspection, we'll certainly be checking to make sure they're installing the right trees. But I'll let them explain when they're planting the trees, which is different than how most developments do it.
It's my recollection also that they agreed to put additional trees in that berm on top of that 15-foot berm. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, what I'd like to see is if you guys would spend a couple of extra dollars for add another foot or two to those trees to give them almost a total buffering back there as the construction goes on during that phase of it. I don't think that's too much to ask.
That is our intent, and actually, I believe the trees.
Okay, so you're gonna go above and beyond what the
I
township is
believe,
requiring?
I believe that our trees are proposed to be like 12 to 15 feet high when we plant them.
Oh,
We're in
Okay.
excess of the township requirement.
thank you.
Because we're trying to meet that same standard that you're.
Good.
And one of the things that we did discuss with our neighbors was that the very first thing we're going to do when we get on to start construction is we're going to move dirt on the site to create the berm and plant the trees before any shovels put in the ground to build the buildings. So we're going to have that berm there from the get-go. And that'll give it, over the course of time, as the buildings get built, it'll be growing, so they won't see it.
Thank you for that. Could some, let me ask the plan, going back to Phil's comment, we're not, if we decide to go ahead with this evening, we're not approving any waivers, I'm assuming, any waivers at all this evening.
The only
There's some waivers mentioned in this.
The only thing that you're approving, if you approve the conditional use, is, as Joe said, the use of the ground for this project. When, as far as the tentative plan that we're asking you to approve, that is only tentative. It doesn't contain engineering, and you've got the full bite at the apple again at preliminary and then again at final. So you're right. I mean, and we can't ask for any waivers yet. One thing, as Kim said, we don't expect to be asking for many, if any, but we won't know that until we do engineering.
We haven't reviewed the landscape plan either, so that's why they say it's that.
All right.
How about architectural design standards? We have standards? Do you anticipate any problem meeting the architectural design standards for the buildings? I think it was, in Kim's letter, it was item number 21.
In whose letter?
It's Kim Kreider's response letter to the engineers.
He's digging it out.
I think it just mentions that there are architectural design standards, and you're not at that point with your actual building designs.
We have in Kim's letter, item 17, architectural design compliance will be provided with the land development plans
Okay.
at preliminary and final. You can see from what's on the screen here, this is the intended look. We've actually, you are correct in saying that we've gone much further in the sort of the design process that is typical at tentative and conditional use. So whatever standards there are, we will certainly be meeting.
Being as this is a conditional use plan, and you knowing that we have architectural design standards, you will meet those, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I have a question about the Bill Dingman brought up, can the sewer line handle the flow from this project? We're in the middle of, we haven't even started the middle interceptor, and I'm wondering which one is going to end up coming first, because the middle interceptor's been in the works for like a bazillion years, and if you come in first, is the existing line going to be able to handle the flows?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I was looking up the architectural items. Could you repeat yourself, please?
I wanted to know if the existing sewer pipe down there will be able to handle the flows from this project prior to us replacing the middle interceptor there, if you guys should be in there first before us replacing the middle interceptor.
We still have to study that as part of our engineering for land development. We have not studied that yet, but it is one of the items we do need to consider all the way down.
And how do we address that, Bill? I mean, do we make them pay for it?
We fully expect that we will pay for whatever is necessary to serve our project.
Okay,
If you need a pipe expanded, we're going to have to do it.
okay. Do we have that on tape somewhere?
You got it on the court reporter right there.
Thank you.
Can,
Comment on Bill's letter, we'll have to
can you go over the traffic impacts and how it's going to affect even 29's already pretty much a mess, but
In addition to the roundabout that we're proposing, we're also proposing some improvements up at Mennonite and 113, the addition of some lanes on Mennonite, left turn lanes specifically. Sorry, all right. Is that better?
Yes.
All right. In terms of 29, we've met with the staff regarding the operations there. I mean, with regards to the traffic on 29, there's a lot of traffic there, as you well know. With regards to the impact this development will have there, it would be not noticeable to the average driver. It would be the difference from a Monday to a Tuesday in terms of difference in traffic, less than 2% additional traffic there. However, there was an adaptive system that just recently went in along 29. McMahon has asked us to look at operations along there in terms of traffic signal timings to further reduce queues and decrease delay. And I know the township is in the process of preparing their an Act 209 study. We have to pay an interim fee towards that, which would provide the township with money should some changes signal-wise be needed along 29.
How many trips have you calculated for that, roughly?
So with regard to the afternoon peak hour, on which the fee is based, we're estimating 288 trips during that 1 hour time period.
That'd be $288,000.
Correct.
Okay. You finished that? Are you okay?
no, go ahead.
Okay. Continuing with some traffic issues. The roundabout is, in my opinion, a good plan. However, concerned about, can you go back to the Grand Canyon crossing? Concerned about the rest of Arcola Road. So we have traffic calming, not on the map, we have traffic calming at Mennonite and Arcola, where we have islands there, which just slow traffic down. Oh, you're very good, Brian, if you can get, I don't know, you don't have to get up there. And we're going to have a multi-purpose trail here at Grand Canyon, correct? Walking and biking come through there?
Yes.
Okay, so the intersection at Arcola and Grand Canyon is going to be in addition to up further, that's going to be probably one of the largest pedestrian crossings from the other side of the street. So what I'd like to see is improved traffic calming between the roundabout and Mennonite Road. You have folks at White Springs on both sides crossing back and forth for a pool, and you have folks trying to come to the shopping center. So on the south side of Mennonite that goes out the bottom of the picture, going to 29, that's going to be a race course. The roundabout will slow it, but then they're going to speed up through here because that's a wide road. And just like we did on Mennonite, Bill, we made Mennonite, at the far end of Arcola, we shrunk Mennonite. We brought the curbs in, which brought the speed down. Unfortunately, this is a wide road, and so once people see, as you know, a wide road, they're going to drive faster. So how could you put some traffic calming on that road between the roundabout and Mennonite?
Well, there are certainly numerous things that we can look at with regard to calming, and as we go through land development, we're happy to do so. Comes to mind, you brought up pedestrians, we could look at either colored or even raised crosswalks. There are advanced warning signs for pedestrians that we could install, flashing or otherwise, and it will certainly work with McMahon to identify any changes that could be done there.
I think some flashing lights would be, can we look into some flashing LED lights for someone crossing either here and/or up at the pool? I'm sure that some of the residents will talk about how folks have to run across Arcola Road to get to the pool. And I'm also, we need to hopefully address walking along Arcola Road, making sure that we have appropriate walking paths along both sides of the road.
Understood.
All right.
You okay?
I have a couple more things. Is that okay? All right, so I want to reference your fiscal impact analysis. Specifically, I'm going to go to page 29 of the fiscal impact that was created by, ALB created this, correct? David Babbitt, okay. So in the impact reference in page 29, there was several pages of verbal explanation about the impact to the township and the impact to the school district. But I'll go to the summary page on page 29, where it indicates that the school district will see page 30 is, the school district will see a $1.78 million revenue surplus.
For the school district.
For the school district, correct? Because, and the methodology is basically stating that, given the construction of the apartments, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, it will bring in few school-age children in comparison to the number of units that are there.
Correct.
Okay, that's 283% increase in revenue for the school district. But when you go to the township, we have a negative. So it's based, at this point, there's a negative impact on the township resources. Would that be correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, and according to your plan, it's a minus $20,393. That's,
Yes.
That's pretty detailed. Okay. And so I'm going to reference Grace Associates review letter, page 71 of your submissions, towards the back. And so Mr. Grace identified in number 9 on his report, or his, on his review letter, indicating that that it required you to complete a community impact report, and you did that based on that. But your community, but it also indicates that there's going to be a stress or a strain on our public safety, our police and fire services. Is that accurate? Okay.
That's what generates the loss.
Right, right. So, in what way do you propose to help rectify that problem? Or is that to be determined yet? How do you propose to rectify the police and fire service challenge?
What we propose to do is, as we go through the review process, probably a preliminary plan, we will work out a deal with the township through its solicitor so that you don't have that loss,
Okay,
by way of either adding a contribution or somehow we'll work it out.
okay. And referencing, I'm going to go reference the community impact statement dated February 19th, 2018, that was created by Mr. Macy. And that wasn't in your packet for today, but we've previously received that. You've interviewed just to confirm, you interviewed the police chief?
Yes.
Chief Toomey indicated that it would strain the department to the tune of at least one police officer.
Yes.
And same thing with the fire service. You talked to our chief of fire and emergencies at the services at the time, and I'm referencing number 3 on your impact statement, that it would also, Chief Overhold indicated that the fire department will need to purchase additional equipment to service this community. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and only one or two other things. The Montgomery County Planning Commission generally approves this plan, correct? And I do know that the Planning Commission Montgomery County, as long as our traffic consultant had proposed at all times to have Grand Canyon as a pass-through. That was their original recommendation, and that's still what they are recommending. But we as a township basically disagreed with them, and we're making sure that that street is closed and will be used for multi-purpose bicycles and
Yes.
walking.
That's your call.
That's our call.
not the planning commission.
That's right. We listened to the residents, and we all agree to that. So I have no further questions at this time.
I have one or two more. Planning Commission made several recommendations, and I'd like to just address two of them. One of them was applicant will investigate options to the satisfaction of the township for pedestrian and trail connections from this proposed development crossing the intersection of Arcola and 29. I assume that you're aware of that.
Yes, that's what we discussed at the meeting that we had with all of the consultants, and it was agreed that the almost $300,000 that we're going to be contributing for traffic impact would be used towards some ultimate resolution of that issue, which is going to cost millions of dollars. I mean, we would never do it. And we also agreed to talk about maybe moving it down further towards the real estate and insurance office down the road where you don't have 8 lanes to cross. So that was discussed at that staff meeting.
Okay. The other one, applicant will work with adjacent landowners, and I assume that I'm assuming they were talking about Brandolini, in improving pedestrian connections between the developments. I'm curious as to what Mr. Brandolini is going to have to do to his development. I assume do something for the connection to be possible there, so.
Yes, we have met with Brandolini on a couple of occasions, and I've agreed to meet with them again with Jeff and anybody else the township wants to send to confirm that, in fact, our idea of 2 different crossings is the right answer, and anything that's going to be done will be done at our cost. He's not going to spend a dime, so we'll do it.
I don't have any other questions. Does anyone else up here on the board have any questions?
All right. This is the opportunity for members of the public to offer questions and comments. And the only thing that I would say prior to hearing what concerns you have is keep in mind the ground rules that were explained at the outset. With a conditional use hearing, the question is only whether the criteria have been met in the ordinance, and if they have, the applicant's entitled to the use. And then with the land development, even more so, land development is an I dotting T crossing procedure. If they satisfy the conditions in the saldo, then they're entitled to that relief. So really, it's not an evening where the board is being asked to decide whether they should do something or should not do something in the general sense that you might not want the development to go through. It's really focused on more specific questions on whether they comply with the criteria in the ordinance. But having said that, by show of hands, how many people wish to offer questions or comments? Well, that was a lot easier than I anticipated, by about 20. Sir, do you want to come on up and... Heck, your question is going to be shorter than my explanation to everybody.
They will be. Hi, good evening. My name's Michael Phil. Last name is spelled F-I-L, 311 Joshua Tree Drive. As Mr. Mullen mentioned earlier, we've had a handful of meetings, and I only have 3 brief comments to make. All recent meetings with Audubon Land Development have been very productive, and our compliments to Mr. Mullen, Macy, and Shapiro for helping us understand it and then make changes to address our concerns. The residents have been highly complimentary of the architectural stylings depicted on the perspective rendering provided by Mr. Shapiro, the left one there. We had after our last meeting, we had a community meeting, tried to educate everybody that did attend as to, okay, here's the big picture, give everybody an opportunity to size it up. And that was a very big positive, that they really liked the stylings that's there. The next statement is, try not to take this out of context, but I'll say it. The proposed project is in the realms of a 400 to 500% increase in density in contrast to the adjacent age-qualified parcel. And the residents have raised significant concern as to the potential to negatively affect their home values. Take this more as a statement that existing residents just want to defend their investment in the community, not a big negative, because there's been a lot of dialogue between Mr. Macy and one of our residents who was a bit ill today and couldn't make it, Mr. Mays, and trying to talk about that one building, saying, hey, if you could squish this one down so that it keeps the visual impact, reduces the visual, you could put the quantity of those you lose anywhere else, we would be fine with that. So I just wanted the statement to be in its proper context. People aren't negatively talking about it as much as they just want to protect their existing investment in the community. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Phil.
Okay, there's another hand now. Come on up.
My name is Jim Rusty, and I live in White Springs at Providence at 409, excuse me? Rusk, R-U-S-K. Live at White Springs at Providence on Shenandoah Drive. You know, I just want to, one of the things that have come up here is the berm. You brought up the berm. And I just wanted to make a comment that when they showed us that this recently, originally they said it would be 15 feet berm with trees on it. But when they showed us, they kind of had a, it's not here, but that view from our decks. They showed several views from decks in the back. And from that deck, with the berm and the tree, it showed that you wouldn't be able to see from that point anything in back, right? My concern about that is they originally said 15 feet, because when they do that, it's not all 15 feet, they said. Sometimes it might be low, it might be lower than 8 feet. My concern about that is I'm more confident with the dirt, if you will, because it's more, you know, trees die. Trees have to be maintained. And I think I'd be happier if you kept it 15 feet. You know, I think would be safer for our development if it was stayed at 15 feet with the trees on it. The other comment I have is, you mentioned arborvitaes. My history with arborvitaes is they're not very strong in our weather, because when it snows, the arborvitaes grow like this. And if you're not careful to take care of that, you'll end up to die. You'll end up dying. But they're not, you know, certain types of arborvitae are not strong enough to withstand the snow. And I would wish you would can reconsider that and put something up here that's strong enough to withstand it. That's what I'm thinking about. We currently do have a problem with stormwater exists today, because there is a slope coming down through White Springs, particularly on Shenandoah. And it's pretty, and when it rains hard, I'll tell you what, it gets pretty bad. It kind of, washes through, and it looks like a river going through parts of our development. But they did promise that when they put their development, that would fix that problem. So I wanted to just make a comment about that. They did comment they would fix that problem. And I just want to put that on the record, so to speak, that they did say that. That's all I had to comment about.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, seeing no other hands raised, Mr. Mullen, did you have any exhibits to admit, or did we? Do you want to say the panels, or didn't mean to make you get up?
I think what we could just ask is that the record that the township has for this application be included in this hearing.
By
Because they've
reference.
already been submitted. So you already have copies of all the things we've talked about. We didn't bring additional copies of them.
Right. Okay. Board members, it's up to you. If you're comfortable voting at this time, then John, you could call it for a vote. If by talking quietly among you, anybody wishes to meet privately to discuss, then that's an available option. If you don't feel the need, then we don't have to do that.
I'll make a motion. I'm going to make a motion to wait. Make a motion to defer. Yeah, you don't have to make a motion. You can just say, put the stream on. Okay. All right. That's what you do. Okay. It's up to you. I'll do it if you want me to. Oh, you can do it. I'll do it. How do you feel about doing it?
I'm okay, because we're going to get all the things that they've discussed, we can bring up at the land development process, making sure the berms are right height,
Yeah.
the type of trees, those sorts of things.
Mr. Solicitor, I think the general consensus of most of the board up is here is we'd like to take our 45 days to come up with an answer for this.
Okay. Well, then the issue that's that is your prerogative. And we'll close this hearing. We'll close the hearing. It would leave open, off the record, the issue of the tentative. So we'll have to put it as a condition of the tentative that you still have to have.
That would be fine.
Which actually already I have drafted in the tentative. It does state it's conditioned on this. So we just wouldn't be able to put the preliminary right in line, but you're probably not going to be ready to move that fast anyway on a 30-day turnaround from tentative to preliminary anyway, right?
Correct.
So we can handle that. All right, well, let's have do you want to vote to defer? You just take a vote to defer a further decision by, it doesn't have to be roll call, just by show of voice vote that you're going to not render a decision this evening, and we're going to defer for the 40, yes, Jeff?
My extension, the NPC timeline runs out at the end of this month. So as part of this, I just want to make sure that we have it on the record that we're going to get an extension. I don't want to run into something at the end of this month.
We still have the November 15th.
No. We could do this at the next meeting if you want.
Okay, gotcha.
The discussion is that we have to get an NPDES permit so we can build the berm, and the delay is going to interfere with us. We can't get the NPDES permit without an approval. But I guess the bottom line is, if we need an extension, we'll give you an extension, because otherwise you'll turn it down. So,
Yeah, I mean, the flip side, the flip
extension.
side to that is that you would be required to vote no on the tentative because it requires the conditional as a condition. So I'm sure we'll work out the time extension. No matter how it's stated that it's not open-ended, but we'll figure that
Yes,
out.
we'll work it out to whatever you need.
We'll come back as soon as we can with an answer for you.
All right, so,
Do you need a
but
motion? What do you need?
just by a voice, are you all, I just wanted to indicate on the record that the majority of you are comfortable not rendering the decision tonight, but doing so within the allowed 45 days. Is that the desire of the board?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's close the hearing. Thank you, Mark. That's still, and we're off the record. That's still, the tentative is still on your agenda as the next thing. You know, so now the conditional use hearing's closed. The application for tentative sketch approval's next, but we've now just pretty much talked through how that's going to go.
We can't vote on that anyway because we have to put the conditional use in first, correct?
No,
Right, well, I think what you're tabling it, I mean, you don't want to deny it because then you'll just be
Right.
starting over. There's no point. So I guess we'll table that because the extension's going to get worked out.
Okay. Do we,
Table number 4.
yeah, can we table
That's it.
both of those then till next time?
Just 4. We already did 3.
Well, right, the hearing is closed. We'll have to deliberate, we'll figure out time to meet. You're allowed to meet as the court, so to speak, on the conditional use, to hash out whatever concerns you have in terms of the details.
Okay.
We'll work that out quickly. We'll find some times.
Yeah. But we still have to go through the process for the next thing, which is the land development.
I think you're just tabling that.
Okay, good. So be it. Next thing on the agenda is old business. Consider the adoption of Resolution 2018-71, authorizing a joint multimodal transportation fund grant application for improvements along the Lewis Road corridor in Limerick Township, Royersford Borough, and Upper Providence Township. Ken, is that you?
Thank you. Yes, this is just modifying a resolution that you passed, I believe, at the last meeting. The last meeting identified Tim as being the person to sign the contracts. I believe the current resolution includes Tim and Richard and Brian?
And I think it's John.
Or John, yeah. So it's just modifying the resolution that was previously passed again to include three potential people to sign the contract instead of just one.
Is he talking about Lemon?
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion, guys.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2018-71, authorizing a joint multimodal transportation fund grant application for improvements along the Lewis Road corridor in Limerick Township, Royersford Borough, and Upper Providence Township.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2018-71, authorizing a joint multimodal transportation fund grant application for improvements along the Lewis Road corridor in Limerick Township, Royersford Borough, and Upper Providence Township. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. And Ken, you're up next. Consider the adoption of Resolution 2018-66, authorizing a multimodal transportation fund grant application for the installation of left turn lanes at the Route 113 Black Rock Road intersection.
All right, again, as a reminder, this is the same grant program that the township was just successful in getting almost $1 million for the intersection down in Montclair. The next round is currently open, and they're accepting applications until November 15th. It was decided to apply for, again, improvements to the intersection of Route 113 and Black Rock Road / Jaeger Road. We're looking to utilize the existing roadway cross-section, but we have to reconstruct the shoulders to provide left turn lanes in both directions. We did do a cost estimate of that, and we expect the total cost to be about $708,000. This is more than what was assumed in the
What was
past.
that?
Part of the reason for the cost is...
700?
It is a lot of money. Part of the reason is when you go through this grant program, PennDOT looks to really improve the intersection, so they will require that we upgrade the signal equipment, they'll require that we upgrade the signal controller, and they also require that we do ADA ramps. So the overall cost will be about $708,000.
How much are we asking for?
$544,000. and the
we're
match would be $164,000.
I said the
Will
same
this,
thing.
will this, because they're both the same grant, the are they competing with one another?
No, because the township was already successful in last year's.
No, I'm talking
He's
about
talking
the
about
other
the
one for the
Limerick one.
Limerick one.
No, I'm sorry. The other one, it's a different grant program, and that is also one that that's a Green Light Go program, and the township was successful in that one too. That's just to really sign the agreement.
Okay, so how mu, going back to the last one that we just passed then, how much are we investing in these? How much is it costing? Are we doing the engineering, or is Limerick Township doing the engineering?
Limerick Township is paying the match. I believe that they were paying $60,000 as part of that previous program.
So what are the dollar amount that we're committing to?
Upper Providence Township is not committing to anything.
Okay, we're just
For Township
doing
Line Road and-
application on it. Okay, other than the improvements that we've already committed to through development contributions at Linfield Trap, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so we are contributing something because that.
Right, I mean, the program that you specifically signed the resolution for is specifically for signal upgrades and ADA ramps. So that was separate from the intersection of widening. And again, PennDOT is paying for, I believe, 80% of it, and Limerick Township is paying for the remaining. I believe their match was $60,000, if I remember correctly. So then there is a separate phase of that intersection improvement, yes, where the township is looking to utilize funds that are being contributed from the Rouse Chamberlain development, in addition to money that was previously contributed to the township. And that includes, again, really putting left turn lanes on both of the Linfield Trap approaches.
Has that been fully engineered yet? Or
That has not been fully engineered yet, no.
You're working on that, though?
We're in the very early stages of that, yes.
A lot of money.
Well, yeah, it is a lot of money.
Entertain a motion.
Pass the motion for?
I'll move to adopt Resolution 2018-66, authorizing a multimodal transportation fund grant application for the installation of left turn lanes at the Route 113/Black Rock Road intersection.
Second that?
I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2018-66, authorizing a multimodal transportation fund grant application for the installation of left turn lanes at the Route 113 Black Rock Road intersection. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. New business. Consider action authorizing a grant consulting agreement with Firehouse Grants LLC for the submission of a safer grant. Tim, would you give me some fill in here?
We are looking at possibly putting in for a safer grant. This is similar to the COPS grant for COPS. It includes a diminutive funding over a 3-year period. This kind of ties into our budget discussions later. We are looking at putting in for possibly 2 career firefighters as we move forward with our integration with TRAP. And this will allow us to reduce our allocation for per diem firefighters, and will also allow us some more flexibility in the shifting. And we're still in negotiations with TRAP as far as their contribution. This is a grant that we think we should look into getting. Even if we get it and we find out that it's not something that fits into our program, we can always deny it in the future. But I think it behooves us to move forward on this. We have a grant writer who's worked with various towns. I actually used him in Warrington. We were able to get a safer grant after, I think, our second try. I think with our regionalization efforts with TRAP, I think we stand a greater chance of funding. I think the deadline is December. This grant company, the guy who puts this together, it's kind of a cottage industry. He only does this type of grant. He does a lot. He's worked with a lot of the volunteer firefighting companies in the area,
Including
in the
Martin.
region. What's that?
Including regular.
Including Black Rock. And And he has a pretty good success rate. His blanket fee is $7,000, $1,000 down to start the process. And I think the deadline is the end of December, so. We're looking for authorization to enter into a grant agreement with this gentleman, and with an expenditure not to exceed $7,000 with $1,000 down.
I think it's a worthy cause. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to authorize the grant consultant agreement with Firehouse Grants LLC for the submission of a SAFER grant.
Not to exceed $7,000?
It's seven, I read the contract. It's $7,000. If we're not successful in the award, because sometimes you're not successful, they will resubmit the application as many times as we need until we are successful. And when we are successful, at that time, it would cost us another $1,000. So really, it's $8,000 is the maximum.
But the agreement's not a part of the motion, or it's not a part of our minutes, so how much are we willing to spend?
I'll make a motion to authorize how about this, Phil? I'll make a motion to authorize the consulting agreement with Firehouse Grants LLC for the submission of a SAFER grant not to exceed $8,000.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to authorize the grant consulting agreement with Firehouse Grants LLC for the submission of a SAFER grant not to exceed $8,000. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed?
So Al, my question really is, if he gets us a grant, we don't know how much, what grant we're going after, how much we're going to get, but for 2 firefighters for 12 months is over $100,000. Then it's worthwhile probably. But if he doesn't get us the grant, I mean, I don't know what we're getting. I mean, he's gonna write a grant for us, and I don't know what he's writing a grant for, other than what we discussed earlier and what Tim explained now.
He's submitted. We're going to submit a grant.
A grant application.
A grant application for 2 firefighters.
How much is that gonna cost us if we, so if we don't get the grant, we're not hiring them, is that right?
That's correct.
That's right.
Correct.
That's correct.
Right.
And could you give a little bit, there was some more details too. They paid, that grant paid for 2 years.
It's a 3-year payout. You wrote it down.
It's 100%, I think it's 75/40,
Yeah,
and then
something
it's on our own after the
And then
third
fourth
year.
it's all on us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And by that time, we'll have hopefully some better idea of what our contributions into the fire service on a yearly basis are.
All right, motion's already carried, so moving on to the next one. Consider action authorizing $186,282.01 distribution of the 2018 fire relief funding allocation. I think we all know what this one's about. I'll entertain a motion on that.
Is Brian?
This is for the fire relief funding allocation.
Here we go.
Goes out to everyone.
Mr. Chairman, this is the township's annual relief funding allocation. We act merely as a pass-through. We receive funding from the state. We're obligated to disperse it to volunteer firemen relief associations within 60 days of receipt of that money. Staff's recommendation is that the formula that's been applied to the general funding allocation for the fire companies most recently be applied to the relief funding distribution for 2018. The amount we received this year was $186,000 and change. Unfortunately, it's down more than $41,000 over the past 2 years. The formula, if you want, how much detail you want to get into, but the formula is broken down by district size, by population within that district, and the call volume within that district. Those are weighted at 30% for district size, 30% for population, and 40% for call volume. So it is weighted slightly towards in favor of the calls that the fire companies run. The 4 fire companies that serve the township with the first 2 district include Collegeville, Trapp, Royersford, and Black Rock. And you can see in the bottom of the table, the $186,000 breaks out with 46% to BlackRock, 22% to Royersford, 20% to Trapp, and 11% to Collegeville.
I know you guys are all tired of hearing me beat this dead horse to death, but I'm not real happy with the way that this money is being distributed, but so be it. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to authorize $186,282.01 distribution of the 2018 Fire Relief Funds allocation.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second to authorize $186,282.01 distribution of 2018 Fire Relief Fund allocation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Consider adoption of Resolution 2018-72, approving a tentative sketch land development plan for Providence Business Park 3, HB Fraser, comprising a 30,000 square foot building consisting of office and warehouse space. Is anyone here representing them? Mr. Mullen, you're on a late night tonight.
Yeah, I got one after this, too. Anyhow, I'm here on behalf of Providence Business Park 3, and Tom Ledgate is going to show us the plan and describe for you what this is. This is an electrical contractor who wants to move into the township. Mr. Holloran from the HB Fraser is here tonight if you have any questions about exactly what it is they do. They do electrical work for GSK, Villanova University, and have a number of locations. And Tom, why don't you describe for the board what it is that we're proposing? And by the way, I can mention that we have absolutely no problem with any of the review letters. We're 100% in compliance with them.
The site is the same site that has the global manufacturing on it, that's under construction, same site that has a regional basin, same site the board saw for the BWR presentation 4 or 5 months ago, whatever that is. So if you're coming off a Hollow Road where the new access road has been built that goes to Global, you're familiar with that? It's, that road is just built. If you keep on going straight on that road, you don't turn left to go to Global, you end up right into the proposed Fraser lot. So it's a building with associated parking, associated truck maneuvering area, as shown there in the plan. You go to the second sheet, who's controlling the computer?
I just have the one.
Oh, okay.
I just have the single sheet.
No problem. So what you see there is the building, the parking lot, access drives, and then we're proposing some landscaping to be at the buffer of the property line in the area or adjacent to the HB Fraser development. Pretty simple plan. It's essentially following the infrastructure that's already in place as part of Global for water, sewer, and access.
Tom, why don't you discuss the emergency access?
Sure. Part of the plan shows an emergency access heading back out to Egypt. If the board remembers, that's an emergency access road that was discussed as part of the BWR project. So we're just reflecting this, and that if BWR goes first, they'll build the emergency access. If Fraser goes first, it'll be part of that one. So there'll be an emergency access drive from what I'll call the Global intersection back out to Egypt, and that would only be for emergency access. In the future, that would serve as a driveway for some other development, but that driveway would only be fed by the, I'll call it the Global driveway. So the intention is that Egypt will always remain as an emergency access.
And will the emergency access presently being shown off of the Meadows driveway be eliminated?
Yes. As part of Global, there was a little emergency access drive that came off the Meadows Drive. Once the Egypt Road emergency access, for lack of a better term, once that's constructed, the Meadows emergency access can be removed.
You're going to do what with the Meadows driveway?
Remove that emergency access once the Egypt Road direct emergency access is constructed.
Okay. So you're basically not going to do anything to that access then, the one at the Meadows?
It's this portion right here, John?
Yeah.
That small portion will go away when this portion is developed.
Okay, gotcha.
That's exactly right.
How many employees? How many employees are going to be here? Employees, how many employees?
Hello, I'm Frank Holler from HB Fraser Company. There'll be about 30 employees here.
Are you closing another location to move here?
Yes, we are. We have an office in King of Prussia. We're going to relocate our main facility to Oaks and Little King of Prussia, and sell our King of Prussia office.
Upper Providence, you're moving to Upper Providence, very good. We're picky with that, but okay. Very good, that's good.
Any other questions up here? Yeah, pretty simple. Phil?
This is only the tentative sketch, so.
Yeah.
The tentative sketch resolution was in your packet, fairly straightforward. And Mr. Mullen indicated we'll comply on all the review letters.
Some of them are pretty long.
Doesn't matter. There was some misunderstanding because when the application was filed, somebody mentioned that this was a warehouse. And accordingly, the reviewers said, oh, it's a warehouse, so we need this and this and this. But in fact, it's not a warehouse use. It's an electrical contractor's building that has a warehouse part of it. So that's why the review letters were long, but we can comply with all of them.
Okay.
But you are storing stuff there that you're going to use.
Just what we're using. Yeah, I mean, a warehouse under your zoning ordinance is like, if I have a warehouse and you can put stuff in, and he can put stuff in, and he can put stuff in. That's not a warehouse.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2018-72, approving a tentative sketch land development plan for Providence Business Park 3, HB Fraser, comprising of 3,000 square foot building consisting of office and warehouse space. 30,000 square foot.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2018-72, approving a tentative sketch land development plan for Providence Business Park Number 3, HB Fraser, comprising a 30,000 square foot building consisting of office and warehouse space. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries.
And one note on the picture, sketch plan, whatever that is, Fraser is spelled Z-E-R, and on our cheat sheet, it's spelled Z-I-E-R. Could we get those in?
It's ER, not I-E-R.
Okay, review 2019 preliminary budget highlights and authorize its advertisement for the required 20-day public inspection period as required by state statute, and set a final adoption date on Monday, December 3rd, 2018. Tim, I guess this is yours.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, once you guys authorize this, this officially becomes a public document, and we'll upload this immediately to our website for public review. Up until now, it's been kind of a draft document. So I just want to go over just some brief, very high-level highlights. Our projected revenues are $17,170,000, and I've done a little pie graph just to go over the percentage and how our revenues comprise our pie graph. And we did, Rich and I did check, the pie graph does add up to 100%, so. Our earned income tax, we're estimating, it's our main revenue driver for next year. We're estimating our earned income to be about $9.2 million at 54% of our total budget. Our public safety levy, we're estimating at $2,550,000. That's at 15% of our total revenue pie. Department revenues, when you factor in permits and other types of fees and fines and forfeitures, that totals around about 2.17 million, 13% of our budget. Real estate transfer tax, we're estimating close to $1 million for next year. Local services tax, we're expecting that to be fairly level at $850,000. That's 5% of our revenue pie. And our grants and shared revenue total estimates at about $822,000. That's about 5% of our revenue. And finally, our last is our miscellaneous revenue is around $572,000. Our revenues or expenditures are also at $17,170,000, so this is a balanced budget. One thing, before I get into that budget pie, I want to just show you this table graph on the process that we took this year to gradually work down the budget reductions in the expenditures. We started with initial department head budget requests of around $22 million. My office, in cooperation with Richard and one-on-one meetings with the department heads, we pared that back by about $4.6 million. And then we had our 2 budget workshops last week, and we've made some further reductions of around $830,000 to a proposed spending plan of $17,170,000. Something noteworthy I'd like to just give with the board tonight is we reduced about $5.5 million in total reductions. And for the first time in several years, this spending plan assumes a zero use of cash reserves to balance the budget. We really tried to take a hard line in trying to really scrutinize every line item. So you have an authentic, really true balanced budget without the use of any cash reserves to balance our budget. Our expenditure, our general government, that consists of the Board of Supervisors, administration and finance, the tax collector, and all of our legal services, comprises about 12% of that, $17 million, about 1.9, close to $2 million. The police services budget is about 38% of our total budget pie. That is around $6.5 million. Our emergency services, this is the one that got the biggest increase, about a 30% increase overall, because we're we're changing our 5-day to a 7-day split shift, and you'll see a major increase in our per diem employees, and also the costs of 2 new career firefighters. So that rounds out about $2.1 million. That almost equates maybe shy of $100,000 the total amount of our public safety levy or fire tax. Our next item is our planning and zoning. That's Jeff's department, coming in around $967,000. Our public works budget comes in at about $3.2 million at 19%. And our parks and recreation comes in around 6% at $1,046,000. And our last one is our transfers miscellaneous. This is our major accounts where we have pass-throughs, and also the major contribution to our capital and debt service fund. That's where we have monies going out to do that. And we were able to do that this year without using any cash reserves. Really a brief comment on our sewer budget, our 2019 sewer budget. Our table 3 is on our sewer revenues. We're looking at about $3,079,000. This is the first year, and I would suggest that at our next meeting, we try to take some time and focus primarily on the sewer portion. A lot of our discussions usually is on the general fund side. But as you know, the lower Perkiomen Valley Regional Sewer Authority has been going through some major expansions and upgrades, and as you know, the Middle Interceptor project is going forward. So we've been given the pass-through bill for some of the debt service on that facility, and so we're looking at a rate increase to offset those increases from the regional authority, in addition to beefing up our accounts for transfers to capital and to account for charges for administrative service. And There's also some policy issues which we still have to address. I'm going to recommend that we do this at our next meeting about on how we prospectively move forward when we do major sewer projects, on the types of tapping fees. How much do we require people to connect? I think those are some issues that we need to resolve from a policy perspective to put some final, so we can get a final good sewer budget for 2019. Sewer fund expenses, we're looking
Tim, a
at.
question on the sewer. If we have pass-through expenses through the regional authority, that's increased operational costs, so does that get passed on to, should be passed on to the users, or is it only passed on through new hookups?
No, it's passed through, it's in the user fee. It's in the user fee. Am I correct, Richard?
But if it's an upgrade, to the regional system, the existing users aren't, it's not costing any more for the original, and the users that are using it now, it's upgrading so that we have more capacity.
Yeah, I guess that's a philosophical argument. The way we're looking at it,
Mr.
it's a
Brett?
pass-through expense to us.
Because we ran into that problem with the financing and everything else before, so where would that money come from? I mean, where would you suggest it be charged?
the tap, you're talking about the difference between user fees and the connection tapping fees.
Yes.
I think the reason Tim used the word philosophically is that, the tapping fees, when you're paying to connect, you're also paying for all the improvements that were done up to that point. So although there's the tapping fees, you see them as somebody coming in new, connecting and paying for the privilege of it, they're also theoretically paying for their share of catching up to what other people have been paying all along towards funding the system. So when you say where should it come from, or you're talking about how to line item the pass-through charges from the regional authority, is that what you're?
Yeah, because we have two separate accountings for it. One is for the tapping fees, which is what we charge for them to tap into the system. In the case of like the PTC 106, where they're going to make capital contribution for tapping fees for all those units, that's going to increase that part of our finances. So do we need to increase, would we need to increase our user fees?
Every facility, and I assume the regional authority, I mean, every facility runs, you're contributing for operating and for capital contributions.
Right.
I would assume that whatever, I don't know, I'd have to ask Rich, but I assume that whatever gets passed along to you has that breakdown, and that's what you would follow. I don't, do they give you that broken down that way?
But our tapping fees that we collect from developers or people that just want to tap into the system, that's not an operational expense, that's, right?
I think you can argue that's capital.
It's a different fee than the user fees that we bill
Yes.
everybody on a quarterly basis.
Yep.
And that's what has to stay with it, should stay within this, the sewer fund for future repairs and maintenance.
Right. Well, a lot of, it should, I've seen EDU agreements, I don't even know if the townships, I haven't looked at it, but I've seen other ones where when they pay for the connection, they agree that you can use it how you need to. So it doesn't have to go towards capital, even though they're paying that theoretically their share for that, but that you can use it how you want. But if you make the decision to keep it allocated that way, that's for you to say.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we have it.
But just to clarify, the authority sends us a monthly bill, am I correct? Yes. And the monthly bill is starting in January, is going to have a higher bill to us, which I think the easiest way to pass that on is to calculate that into the rate structure, I think, because it's a recurring cost. It's clearly an operating cost into our sewer budget. It's how we're looking at it.
If it's their operational cost is going up, I would agree, but if it's for improvements to the system, I don't know that but does it make a difference, or should we have it make a difference?
Well,
You understand what I'm saying, Bill? You have your operational cost for the sewer plant and the interceptors, that's one cost. Your capital improvement cost is a different cost, and maybe that should be paid out of tapping fees and the operational cost. I don't know how that's broken down when it comes from the regional authority to us.
But as the system ages, some of those future capital expenses have to be borne by the existing ratepayers. You can't just count on future ratepayers who are
No, but I'm
tapping
talking
in to
about the
pay
$10
those.
million interceptor line. The people that are using the sewers now shouldn't be paying for the upgrade of a $10 million, because it's broken down over multiple municipalities and the people.
And I think the bill we're getting from the.
We could end up splitting hairs on who actually goes into that
Yeah.
interceptor too, but we're not going there at that point.
But then also, but then if even without putting it into interceptor
Authority
line,
engineer hat?
you're going to upgrade old systems that they're benefiting from too. So they would be, that system would be replaced eventually to some degree. So you have to break that out too. Even the people who've been paying for 50 years, they're paying for a line that's also going to eventually be replaced, which is what I think what Brian was saying, that eventually, even through their user fees, they are eventually paying
They're
for
going to have
part
to
of
make
the.
a capital investment to replace, I get it, yeah.
This is why we wanted this as an agenda item. We tend to focus a lot on the general fund, and this is something we really need to kind of maybe drill down on
Yeah.
before we adopt the budget on December 3rd. And I'll drill down on the authority's invoice to see how they, I think it's a monthly pass-through, and we're just trying to make the sewer budget balance.
He's got a lot of drilling down to do, doesn't he, Bill?
The regional authority budget is based on operations
Right.
and a debt service. The debt service is their borrowing costs to facilitate capital improvements. And that total dollar figure is then divided by the total number of users on the system through all the member municipalities. And that's how that monthly fee is determined for each user on the system.
Right, so the user fee includes capital because the debt
The
service is
user
for capital.
includes the debt service, which includes the capital,
Right.
yes. The authority will, in the upcoming project, for instance, they're slightly less than 50% of that project will be paid out of the tapping fee fund that they have down there that they've accumulated over the years. You folks have a capital reserve for your sewer. They're going to spend about 50% of the total project cost will be paid from that fund, and the balance of it went into a borrowing, which is the debt service, which will be paid by all the users.
Okay.
Okay?
Makes sense.
One last slide, and that is our capital budget. Richard and I are confident the number is going to, we're still, there may be some slight variances, but it's about $2.9 million in capital expenses divided among these major funding sources. You know, we have our minor capital assessments, which goes through not for projects with not extensive life cycles like computer upgrades and car replacements and equipment. Our capital and debt service fund, we assigned a debt assessment to each cost center, and also included in there the projected balance of the emergency service facility, assuming we use some of our line of credit money with that, and also about $1 million worth of road bonds. So that debt service has been factored into the entire budget. The sewer capital fund is around around $2 million. That need to probably discuss that because some of that I think includes Old Farm Road, Fruit Farm Road. We got state liquid fuels. We're allocating about $1 million for the roads. Open space fund, about $229,000. Most of the recreation-related capital items are coming out of that fund. Fire apparatus fund around $210,000. Capital financing, we're targeting about $5.3 million of the remaining $6 million in the line of credit. That gives us around plus or minus $700,000 in unallocated monies that we can use, because I'm sure the emergency service building is going to come right on budget, right? So we want some wiggle room in case we have some change orders. And the grants and donations is a higher than normal column, but you know, two big projects that we have in there are the Lock 60 Upper Schuylkill Trail Connection Grant, and also the multimodal grant for the Montclair alignment project. I think covers a good portion of that. So that's rounding out to about $12.9 million. And we're trying to leave some monies in our capital accounts in case we have any change orders or unexpected expenses. I think the good news again on this is that we were able to do a contribution to capital without having to draw down our cash reserves in our general fund. So I think that was a good achievement that we haven't had for a while. And it's a practice we're going to try to continue in future budget years. That's the high-level summary, guys, the general fund, the sewer, and the capital. And I have about a 52-page budget document, which I think you all got over the weekend, which has generally, I think, pretty good numbers, which, with your permission and advertisement, we'll upload this to the website. It'll probably be available for the public to view first thing tomorrow morning, and we'll have copies at the, well, I can't say we have copies at the new building yet. It's not. We'll have copies, a couple copies at the police station.
How much is this allowed to change without having to be re-advertised?
Can only change, help me, Joe, I think aggregate-wise, it can't change more than 10%. And
Any
line item, it can't change more than 25%. And if we can get this uploaded tomorrow, we'll easily meet the 20 days to pass this. And this allows us to continue the deliberation, also allows the public to inspect the document. The public may have some questions. I encourage anybody, if they would like to sit down one-on-one with me on any certain questions, I certainly will keep my office open to answer any questions from individual residents. So.
You guys okay with this? Entertain a motion to advertise the budget.
I'll make a motion to advertise the 2019 budget for Upper Providence Township. That's it, my motion.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to advertise the 2019 budget. It's required a 20-day public inspection period. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Okay, disposition of bids, Second Avenue Sanitary Project. Bill?
Yeah, this is the force main replacement for your smaller of your two pump stations along Second Avenue. And there were 8 bids received at the end of October. The low bidder is Pipeline Excavation, Inc. for $114,815, which is approximately $45,000 less than our estimate. And it's actually about $45,000 less than the second and third bidders. It's significantly below the other bidders. We have talked to the contractor several times, and he's well aware of where he is in the pricing, and he has indicated he is more than willing to proceed with his numbers as he submitted them. He's happy to do so.
He's okay.
He's okay?
Hope it works. It's a lot less.
So we recommend award for the $114,815 to Pipeline Excavation Incorporated. There's no one, we looked to see if there was any particular one line item that was just way out of balance with all the others, and there wasn't any. He looked through his things. He said he didn't feel there was any errors in his calculations. And
So everything was in his bid then?
that's what he says, yes.
Make a you're entertaining a motion, John?
I don't have the dollar figure on it. Were you gonna put
Oh, I got it. I make a motion to accept bid for the Second Avenue Pump Station sanitary sewer force main replacement to Pipeline Excavation for $114,815.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve a bid for the Second Avenue sanitary pump station force main replacement project for, given to pipeline excavation in the amount of $114,815. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, authorize to sell surplus equipment on municipal bid. You just need an authorization from us to go ahead and do
It's a
it.
whole bunch of random equipment, some vehicles, furniture, pizza warmer, snow cone maker, gas meters, traffic signals, all surplus equipment, used equipment that is no longer of value to the township. However, we do put these things on municipal bid and people buy it up. Bid it up, I should say.
I want to know about that microwave.
What's pizza warmer?
All right, check municipalbid.com in about a month. It'll be there.
Yeah, and I want to put a bid in for the snow cone machine. Summer's coming.
So, Brian, why are we selling 4 of the spin bikes? Are they?
I question too why we're selling 4 and not all of them. The answer I got from Jen was that we haven't run a class with more than X number of people in the history of the program. So she thought that losing 4 bikes was not an issue.
When I was a member over there, every single bike was in use.
Maybe
When they put them in the room that we had our meetings in, they had to open it up. There were so many people.
in the round room
where we had
upstairs.
our meeting just the other night when we were over there. They were that last Monday night.
Do we need to make a motion on this?
Yes.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to authorize to sell surplus equipment on municipal bid.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to sell, authorize the sale of surplus equipment on municipal bid. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. SEI Capacity Rights Agreement, 41 EDUs. There again, it's kind of self-explanatory. Would you guys, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to authorize capacity rights agreement for SCI for 41 EDUs.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to authorize capacity rights agreement in the amount of 41 EDUs to SEI. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Review zoning appeal 2018-06 for South Lewis Road and Route 422 parcel.
You'll recall, board members, that there was, this was discussed last month as to whether to send me to participate, oppose the application. And I think it was Phil, but whomever said they were looking for some more detail from the applicant's attorney, that maybe if you heard some more details about it, you might affect your decision on whether to have me participate. So George is the attorney representing the applicant. He represented him at the zoning hearing board previously, and of course has this new application, which is a supplement to the one previously. And well, with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Ozarowski.
Good evening, George Ozarowski. One correction, my partner Ed Hughes was actually appeared before the zoning hearing board previously. We submitted a plan for this single lot off of Lewis Road. And I guess it was April. The board heard the case. They in part denied the relief and in part granted the relief. So what we thought we would do is follow up with what the board's recommendations in their findings of fact and conclusion of law, and actually amend that and present a new plan that would hopefully satisfy a lot of the conditions or their concerns at the time. The first photograph you're looking at there is an aerial where Tidley Run is. That's where the lot is located at. It's right in front of the Mango Apartments. To the left is 422. On the other side of the street is the 7th grade elementary school. To the right of it is more of Mango Apartments, Apartments. On the second page is actually the plan that we showed to the zoning hearing board the first time. And I would like to go over with you some of the key changes on the plan. Bruce? I apologize. If I'd known that you had a projector, I would have
The
submitted
folded
this.
over one is the one to look at now?
That's actually the old plan that was submitted at the first zoning hearing board. So this is the new revised plan. Maybe you can stand up a little bit further. So some of the key facts are this. In the first zoning application, we asked for side yard relief. In this revised plan, we are not seeking any side yard relief anymore, basically because we shrunk down the house. In the first zoning application, the front yard setback was 1 feet. That's because basically at Lewis Road, you have it's the same on the plan that you're looking at. You basically have Lewis Road's obviously a state highway. You have about the edge of the carway, then you have a right-of-way for the state, which is about a couple feet after that. And then you have the right-of-way of the township that goes in over another about 30 feet. So you have a very big right-of-way there that probably will never be used because you have, first of all, it's a state road. Secondly, you have the bridge abutment there to the left. So the likelihood of ever using the township right-of-way is very remote. The third area, and on the new plan, that was increased to 2.86 feet. The third area that has been changed is the rear yard setback. When we designed the first plan that you're looking at, you see the house was actually kind of a custom-designed house that would kind of try to meet the rear yard of the property. As you can see, the lot is very uniquely shaped. With the new house and the new plan, is basically we're putting kind of a traditional house, a traditional rancher here, that is kind of square. So under the new plan, right now, the rear yard setback is at 31 feet, 31.4 feet. And then the building coverage on the first plan was at 22.3%, and the new plan is down to 17.6%. The main reasons for all these changes is we totally redesigned the house. The plan that you're looking at was the original house was 2,032 square feet per floor for a total of 4,000 square feet. One of the things the zoning hearing board had a problem with was the minimal relief necessary. We thought the house was too big. So the new house that we have designed is going to be 1 story. The interior space is going to be 1,180 square feet. It's basically a 3-bedroom house with 1 full bathroom and a half bathroom, and then a 400 square foot garage. So we reduced both the size of the house dimensionally, and we took it down a floor. So it would be more appropriate. And we thought that would also be better with 422 being next door, get away from the noise of being higher. So we try to redesign it to make it and follow what the zoning hearing board said to do. And then finally, so they're the major changes. Also, we changed the design, so instead of having a side entry garage, we're just coming straight off of Lewis Road, again, to not disturb as much earth as we possibly can. Some just statistics about the lot itself. It's actually 15,000 square feet. When you take away the right-of-way, it's down to 9,150. That's what you have to use for the zoning relief. So it's not that the lot is very, I mean, it's a decent-sized lot. Now, it's too small because it's an R1 zoning district that normally requires 40,000 square feet. But when they took 422 came through and the condemnation of the property, this is the lot that was left after the condemnation. So it really has some, it's kind of burdened by that as it sits. But right now, it's a non-conforming use, a non-conforming lot in the township. If you look at the other information that we provided to you, the third sheet comes from the county. To give you some idea, there is a couple, you see the subject properties on the left-hand side. On the other side of the street, there is some 75-foot lots. If you go a little bit further, I guess to the east, there are 3 lots that are 8,993 square feet, another one at 10,000 square foot, another one at 9,816 square feet. So there is lots of this size in this very much of this area of the township that all have single-family homes on them.
Okay, so what is your hardship? I mean, that's what the zoning hearing board, and the hardship, It was created before he owned, the owner purchased the lot. He knew what he was purchasing if he purchased this lot. It's not like this was,
Well, the hardship is it's a uniquely shaped lot that's non-conforming.
but he knew that before he purchased the lot.
Yeah, but the lot was created before the zoning ordinance was created. So that's why it's non-conforming. It's still.
It was created by the 422 bypass.
Correct.
Okay? So
Yeah,
he
yeah,
didn't
it
own it
wasn't-
before the 422 bypass went in.
Yeah, but it's still a personal, it's a useful lot. There's no reason not to use it. There's no reason, the lot itself is because it's too small. That's the hardship.
No, the house is too big.
No, we made it as small as reasonably as possible at this point. They were complaining that the house was too big when we were there before, and that's why we reduced the size of the house
So,
greatly.
I mean, you're giving me what, you're showing me what you presented to zoning hearing board, and I can't even see what you have up there. If I'm looking at the setback lines in the front, the back, and the side yard,
Can I approach?
how big is my building envelope? So where's your setback line from the road?
So the zoning hearing board found.
Now, where is your setback line from the, okay. Now, where's your rear yard?
Here.
Okay, where's your side yards?
The,
No, your setback lines.
Yeah, this is the side yard.
Then what you're showing me, it fits within the building envelope.
Now, this is the rear yard setback.
That's what I asked you.
That's what I pointed to.
No, you,
So this is exactly what I pointed to. Rear
this
yard
is,
setback, right
this
there.
is your building envelope, right here. Is that what you're telling me?
No, the rear yard setback and the front yard setback actually kind of collapse on each other.
Where's the building envelope? What is he asking for? Show me where
Side yard is here.
show me where the house is, show me what the house is gonna sit on.
That is the house.
That is where it's-
That's the house right there.
And the zoning hearing board found we actually had a hardship for the front yard and the rear yard, because of the size of the lot. We
Right.
actually found that there's a hardship there. They agreed with us on that. But they had a problem was the original plan that you're looking at, we had to kind of slide more to 422, because we didn't think anyone would care that much about that. So, okay, that was side yard relief that we asked for. We did away with that. So now we comply with the side yard setbacks. So the only thing we're looking for now is for really the percentage, the building coverage. If required 10%, we're at 17.6.
It fits within the building envelope.
Not to front and rear, because it's impossible.
But you said the only thing you're looking for is a building coverage, but it doesn't fit in the building envelope.
No, it's impossible to fit in the building envelope because of the front yard and the rear yard setbacks. It's impossible, you can't do it. And the zoning board agreed with us. They granted the relief for the front and rear yard setbacks.
George, did they give any indication during the, I know I read the opinion and there's nothing in it. Did they give any indication of what they were looking for on a revised application?
No, they gave us no guidance whatsoever. So what we're trying to do is come in and say, okay, this is what we're proposing to do. We're making a very small house, 1 story on a lot, which is the last page of the presentation is the house that we're proposing to build, which is basically a 1-story ranch.
So they've already turned you down.
They have, under
Okay.
a much bigger house.
And our only job here right now is, do we send the solicitor to represent the township against the applicant or not?
Do we have a
And-
copy of that,
That other decision?
the order, the zoning hearing?
I don't have it here, but I'll send it to you tomorrow.
And we. and-
I can tell you, I'm sorry, John, I can tell you it doesn't say anything about, it just says that the original house, the larger house, was not the minimum relief requested to get relief. So they basically saying they thought the house was too big. They didn't say what they thought was acceptable, which is why I just asked that question.
Right.
There's nothing really else in it that's pertinent to what he's saying here.
Well, I can tell you, I mean, the representatives here, they had no problem. They granted, they said we have a hardship for the front yard and the rear yard. They said that. They said the side yard, they said you could build a smaller house to fit within the side yard setbacks. That's what we did. Now, the lot size, we can't change. But, you know, a 9,000 square foot house, a lot is, you know, in my personal opinion, we have an expert who's willing to come in and say, that's plenty big enough to build a house on, a single-family home. You have them. You have them like page 3, what I showed you. There's single-family homes on lots a lot smaller than that. Matter of fact, if you look at your R3 district, there we have 10,000 square foot lots where you build single-family homes. So that's, you know, if you think about it like that, we're not really asking for that much. It's a single-family home on one lot. So as I said in the beginning, what we're trying to do is We took what the zoning hearing board said. We have changed the plan to hopefully come back to them and say, we revised it, we heard what you were saying. Now we're trying to, try to make it work so, the zoning hearing board will be happy with it. We're not trying to I don't want to give you the impression that we were trying to argue with them or fight with them. We actually heard what they said.
The only issue is the setback in the front and the backyard setback don't make sense because they overlap? Is that?
Yeah, that's because we're in an R1 district. And the R1 district has much larger setbacks. If it was, for example, in the R3 district, it would be very close to the line because the R3 district and this lot is more compatible with the R3 district. Size is.
If your front yard, if the ultimate right-of-way wasn't as large as it was, and you could move the front yard setback further forward, you'd have a bigger end zone.
No, we would never be able to comply with the way this lot size is. Literally, the front yard setback and the rear setback almost, they converge, is the best word to put it.
They go like this.
They overlap.
They converge, they overlap on each other.
It makes a tiny triangle in the middle of the lot.
Exactly.
You could build a triangular house and make it go 2 stories. I'm kidding.
If you're
Thanks.
He almost had a heart attack.
In fact, what he's representing is what the zoning hearing board did. They're giving him the opportunity to go back, and I would agree with what you said before, to go before the zoning hearing board and let them decide. They've already
turned it down.
Huh?
They've already turned it down.
Yeah,
They-
but
they
he's going
turned down
back
the
with
old
something
plan.
new now, but at least I understand what's going on
Okay.
before. So,
As I said, we're just trying to get a good faith effort. This is what they said, and come back to them. The plan that they hopefully will sign. Okay, now it's minimal is necessary. You can't go much smaller than the house that we're proposing to have a marketable house.
well, your client represented at the zoning hearing board that he was building his house for him to live in.
He is. Probably
He's
not
moving.
making that representation now. Because
He's selling his house on,
Upper Indian Head.
yeah, he's going to sell his house on Upper Indian Head and move there.
No, not this house. He was going to do it if the first time was approved, because that was going to be a custom house he was designing. This time around, he's just going to probably sell it. I don't want to mislead you in any way.
Thanks.
So what exactly is the question? Whether or not we send
Whether or not
Joe?
we send a solicitor to represent the township against the applicant.
You've seen the order, Joe?
Yes.
And your guidance to us would be that, I think at this point, let him go back. If what he's representing is that they would accept something smaller, and they've done that?
I think what George is saying, yes, they clearly, the decision does not say you can't do this under any circumstance. They said the house is too large.
Okay.
So he's trying to respond to that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what they did say. They said, we feel like you didn't establish the minimal that was necessary. Now we can go back to the try to establish.
I would recommend we just send him back to the zoning hearing board and we don't take any action on it. That's my recommendation.
I think we let the zoning hearing board do the thing.
Okay.
I agree.
Do we need to make a motion on this, Joe?
Well, since you've listed it as an agenda item, if you make the motion, it gives George something to take back to them if they ask, I guess. So I would say yes. There's a motion to take no further action.
I'll make a motion that we take no further action with this zoning hearing board application.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to take no further action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried.
Thank you for your time.
Review zoning appeal for 615 Port Providence. Ed,
That's
sorry.
me again, okay. And I left the plan on my desk, I'm sorry. If you recall, this is a 4-lot subdivision, and what the zoning hearing board request is for a special exception to use steep slope as one of our side yards. We're not going to build in the steep slope, we just have a side yard that's going to be on one of the lots, steep slope area. And also, we want to put a bioretention basin in a slope area. So those two things are special exceptions under your ordinance, and that's what he's requesting. Now, you may recall, John, and you'll probably be hearing from them before too long, when you approved the tentative plan, you had said that you wanted them to look into public water and coming from either way, also to consider a trail, also to check the pipes. We had a meeting with staff on site, and after that meeting, they're going through that process, and they basically said, well, why are we doing this? Let's see if we get the special exception first. And then if we do, we'll come back and visit that. So we still plan on addressing those issues.
It's the same issue for you here tonight, same thing again. There's a pending zoning case, and Ed is asking that you not send me, obviously, and but that's the issue, it's the same thing.
But you haven't been turned down yet, have you?
No, no, no.
Not like the other applicant.
This is a special exception. You don't get turned down on special exceptions.
Sorry. I'm fine with leaving it the way it is.
Just to amplify, I think when you're talking about a special exception, it's simply a matter, a special exception is the flip side of the conditional use coin. It's the same hearing, it's the same criteria, except it's in front of the zoning board instead of you. So it's a checklist more process, as opposed to where there's a variance issue is more subjective on the part of the board. Here, the ZHB is just going to be running through the criteria.
Okay.
That's fine.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right?
Yep.
Wait a minute.
Pass the motion?
It's up to the board. It's not just my decision.
Bill?
You have my blessing.
okay.
Go right ahead.
Do we have to
Okay,
leave it the way it is? Yeah.
Do we need to take an act? Do we need to make?
Why leave Ed out of that? We did one for the other, so I think we should, have just a motion for no further action.
I'll make a motion that we take no further action on zoning appeal 2018-08 for 615 Port Providence Road.
Second that.
I have a motion and a second to take no action on zoning appeal 2018-8 for 615 Port Providence Road. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Solicitors report.
Well, there was one final change made to the administrative code, and what that was, the state has always had these bid thresholds, as you know. If it used to be at 10,000, if under 3,000, you do between 3,000 and 10,000, you do phone quotes. Over 10,000, you would do, full bids. Then they changed it. They increased all the numbers, and they also inserted a cost of living, a CPI index calculator, so that you don't have to keep going back every year and changing the amounts. Because over time, the original bid amounts had been set and created in like the 1960s, and the numbers in real terms were getting littler and littler, and everything was having to go out to bid. Borrowing from that concept, in the section where it has the manager's authority to enter into contracts, the way it read the last time we talked about it was 25,000 in one category and then 50,000 in another category. On my recommendation, Tim and Brian agreed to just make that $25,000 as one threshold, so they can enter into contracts under $25,000 if the following criteria exist. 1, it's budgeted. 2, it's not for professional services. Well, it's not really 3. It's those 2 things, and then separately, I would add, we put in the cost of living thing. So it says 25,000, but you can adjust it every year to the CPI, all buyers consumer price index, so that the 25,000 could go up without having to come back and revisit the number. But the 50,000 was removed, so there's not like 2 different categories. That's the last change. Well, I mean, it's up to you what the last change. That's the last change I did.
So do we need to take any action on that?
Can we table it tonight
Yeah,
until the
can we
next
table
meeting?
It's been-
That's fine.
Because with the budget last week, I didn't get a chance to go through and look at everything.
Yeah, there was the long set of changes that I made.
Right.
Because, Phil had made some good points that we made those changes. Then there was this one last one. So there's really, depending on how busy you've been, you might have 2 sets to look at.
Right,
This one little last one's easy, but there was the other set of them too.
right.
So,
I haven't
Okay.
looked them over either, so, yeah.
All right, so we'll table it until the next meeting.
I'm good with that.
Okay, supervisor? okay.
Oh, I was just going to ask, is the next meeting, is it here or is it the new building?
It'll be here yet.
Here again. Okay.
2 weeks.
Okay, supervisor comments, anyone?
Other than I'm going to the PML Sustainability Conference next week.
And Phil, to your questions at one of the budget sessions that we had about the contribution to SCA, I spoke to Betsy Daly and whoever is the president of the organization. They will come in. I asked Tim to schedule them. We're going to do that at the next meeting? Right. Okay. Schedule that at the next meeting, so they'll come in and tell you what they've been doing with the money and how it's being spent and what's going on with them and the county, so.
Okay. And you raised a question about the firehouse funding thing, and how, was it a fair distribution of funds? And when I looked at the number of fire calls, we don't determine that. So that's predetermined by what they report as fire calls. The second one is one is square miles, and the other, what was the third one?
Population within the district.
The population. So the only thing that we could change is if we change the response district, which would increase their square mileage and the population. But it's based on the box there, the call boxes.
The
right?
first due district, that's right.
Yeah, so, it's not something that, we could, the way I read it anyway, that we could arbitrarily change to say, unless we change the box location.
I get it, and I think pretty much everybody's in here has seen me beating this horse.
Yeah, it's dead.
And it's dead. And I get it, and it's over, the vote was taken, and that's fine, but and I made this comment earlier, and Al kind of corrected me, for the last couple of years, it's been a different, pardon me?
Formula?
Thank you. Thank you for finishing my sentences for me again. It's been a different formula. And what I want to do is, okay, don't change the formula anymore. Stick with what it is, leave it the way that it is, so that it doesn't get skewed any further than what it's already at. I'm not happy with the distribution either, but, that's neither here nor there. I don't want to get into it. I've been beating everybody up except for you about it. You were lucky because your ears would still be going, no, I wish you would shut up.
I just kept looking at it and say, how can this be changed? And the only thing that you can change is by changing the first due box locations, which would then give them bigger area and maybe more population. But that's based on the distance to the firehouse and the response areas. So,
well, what I was hoping for that because I have no experience at this whatsoever. What I was hoping for was we would take on John Muir, and I called him this morning, but he was not available. And I was going to ask him his opinion, how other municipalities handle it, or how he would handle it, or what other companies have done, and I was going to go with something like that. I just have a problem with it, though. And it's my problem, not the board, so I've let it go at this point in the
Well, I
game.
want to ask Phil, do you feel like that's a fair formula?
well, it appears to be fair because Brian can't change it, Tim can't change it, I can't change it.
It's not arbitrary.
Right, it could be changed if the fire service decides that this particular area should be serviced by a different fire company. That gives them maybe more calls, maybe more square miles, and maybe more population. But it's not something that any one of us
Can arbitrarily
can just say,
change.
we want to change it so one company gets more money and one company gets less.
I get it.
That's,
Yeah, it ends up being not subjective, it uses objective criteria
Right.
to
Yeah.
determine how the money gets
I just looked at it after
doled
we had
out.
our budget meeting, and I said, it's not something that Josh came up with that makes it, works for one particular fire company. It's the same. I mean, you look at the
I don't,
percentages.
and I don't want to get into it. I just, it's
Okay,
like, I think it's been done, it's been voted on, and, all I can say is I'm not happy with it, I'm not in favor of it, but, I voted for it because I wanted everybody to get their share or whatever, and it's like, and to move on from it, so I'm okay with it.
I feel like it's fair enough, and really, even moving forward, we could still double check with John Muir and say, what do other municipalities do?
Well,
That's a
it'll
good
be one of my
question.
first questions when we sit down with Mr.
Yeah,
Muir.
Still double check,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah. There might be another formula that we could use,
exactly.
but
We don't know.
It didn't look like there was anything that any one of us or anyone over there could say, we're going to change this so one company gets more money, one company gets less. It's determined by data.
Yeah, I get it. Any other comments? Anybody?
Oh,
I
one
do
last
have
comment.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I jumped in. One last comment is thanks to the fire company for setting this up. hosting it.
Does Premier Technologies fall under our professional consultants? I'm looking at his presentation and how much we're going to spend. Should we be looking elsewhere? Because I took that proposal to my place of business. They thought that was an awful lot of money to be spending. And they understood more so than I did what that was.
Is that for the IT?
For all the IT stuff.
For all of the IT that's being done. It's
Yeah.
not counting the new building then.
Right. Yeah, for what we have budgeted for 2019 for IT work with all that cloud storage and everything else.
He's saying it sounded high from his.
Yeah.
Which we kind of question that.
Well, we could still pass the budget, we still have to approve to spend the
Well,
money,
that's why
right?
I asked how
Yeah.
much we're allowed to change between.
Right, well, if it would go,
It's not going to affect the budget by 10%, I don't think.
right, and if we were to look at it and award it to somebody else at less amount, we're saving ourselves money on the budget, right? So it's,
But we're not going to make a move that quickly.
right.
Actually, there was, just so you know, there was an error on some of those if you look at the puts and takes, that number came down, because I think Richard didn't double budget the technology. There was a staff error on the calculation, so that actually is half what we had budgeted, right?
Can we just do, and I don't know how you would.
You want to put it out to RFPs?
No, not at this point. I'm not advocating we do that at this point. But if there's some other technology companies that we can bring them in and not show them the numbers, but say, this is what we're planning on doing. What is the cost involved to do these changes and do these upgrades?
Well, that is an RFP,
But that is an
no?
RFP.
Well,
Why don't, look, if you want to table this, we'll talk about it another time, it's getting late.
Yep.
But I'll be happy to discuss it, and I think it's a good idea. I'm not 100% satisfied with what's happening. I have a computer that's been sitting in front of me now for 10 months, and I'm still not happy with it. Like, every time I turn around, I'm having computer issues. So,
okay, well.
that tells me something. Any other questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second for adjournment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much.